So we just went ahead and fixed the glitch.
Great. I seem to be having a problem with my Switch Pros app. It opens up just fine, but as you can see here, all these buttons are blocked out and they're completely inoperable. The other buttons work fine, but the physical buttons work and they light up the indicators on the app. So I contacted Switch Pros after flipping around in the settings menu for an hour or so, and thankfully they got back to me really quick. I've kind of come to expect that from these guys. They're really good with that. So they gave me some suggestions on where to start. First, I tried deleting the app from the phone and reinstalling it. That didn't work. I tried reconfiguring some of the icons and changing the names. And I even tried reassigning and even deleting some of the outputs and some of the triggers and mixing some stuff around. But the problem was, even in the settings menu, I wasn't able to get to the switches that were malfunctioning. So I wasn't able to delete or rearrange any of that information for those inoperable switches. What I wound up having to do, if you hit the settings menu, you go down to the second page of the settings menu, the very last option here, restore settings to default values. What that does is it wipes out all of the settings that you've programmed into the RCR module, separate from the app itself, because all of these settings are actually recorded in the module itself. So when you hit this button here, restore settings to default values, it wipes everything out of the module.
Well, just a second there, Professor. We fixed the glitch.
And it was kind of a bummer to have to do this because it took me a long time to get this app set up in terms of, what buttons do what and how they do it. Thankfully, I did something which I would recommend anybody running the Switch Pros does, especially with the RCR that has a lot more options, is make yourself a spreadsheet. I can probably make a copy of this and maybe I'll put it on the Switch Pros think tank. But before I get into any sort of detail of how I set this up, I really need to update it because while it was extremely helpful in creating a sort of a baseline for me to get my program up and running again, this is wildly outdated. As you can see, it says revision 2 here, and I think my module is probably on revision 10 at this point. I just didn't keep this sort of up to date.
I'm sorry about that. I forgot.
Yeah. Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah, I have the memo right here. I just forgot. But it's not shipping out till tomorrow, so there's no problem.
Yeah. If you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great.
All right, so I'm back with revision number 3. It's actually a complete redo, but I tend to dive down the rabbit hole with this kind of stuff with my ADD. It's just sort of what I...
Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo, and I understand the policy, and the problem is just that I forgot the one time, and I've already taken care of it, so it's not even really a problem anymore.
Yeah.
I went through and I actually rearranged a lot of stuff, a lot of my single tap, double tap, and I rearranged my keys, and I got rid of the previous version of this had just sort of a rudimentary representation of the keypad in the Jeep, and I decided to just take a screenshot from the phone and add that down here. So the way this works is these 3 squares are algorithmically linked. That's sort of the idea of this, is to just cross-reference the hell out of everything so no outputs get rearranged and mismatched. And when I'm looking at wiring in the Jeep, I'm not trying to figure out what output is my engine light, what output is my head unit. I know exactly where everything goes and what's linked to what just by looking at this one sheet. This first column here, these are my switches, the switches on the pad. And the second column, these are the accessories that draw from that particular switch, the accessories that are turned on and off from that switch. And then I have a column for the output number. So dome lights, output 10, engine lights, output 8. So this lists the output number for each of my accessories. And then I have the maximum amperage. That's the maximum amperage that I can push through that output. Most of the outputs on the RCR are 15. Output 9 is a 30 amp. And then you have outputs 1 through 4. Those are 35. And so if you add up the 4 of them, you get 140. And that's how I have them wired up. They're basically ganged together because they power my head unit and my 2 preamp subwoofers in my rear bench. And the next column indicates how the output is powered. Certain outputs you want to power directly from the battery, and others maybe you want to have from the ignition. So for instance, my dome lights and my engine light, I want to have that, I want to be able to power that from my battery. I don't want to have the keys in the ignition to turn those on. But others, like my cube lights, there's no reason I need to have my driving lights while the ignition is off. So I set that to ignition. And this next column, this is the switch type. There's several different switch types that you can use with the RCR. For instance, on, off, you have on, off, there's momentary. That's what this column indicates here. And then these 2 columns are my tap columns. So for situations where you have an on, off, you'll tap the button once and you'll get power to one output, and you'll tap the button a second time and you can have a different outcome. You can either have, that same output and another output, like in this situation where I tap it once and I get my dome lights. I tap it a second time and I get my dome lights and my engine light. For switch 5, I tap it once and I get USB 1. That's the port, the USB port that goes up into my rooftop tent. And I tap it a second time and I get USB 2 and along with a 12 volt power source that powers my floodlights. So this is just an indication of that. This keeps that nice and neat so you know what you get for 1 or 2 taps. So this box here is basically just an inventory of my outputs and the maximum amperage that I can put through those outputs and the accessories that are drawing from those outputs. I also have a column for triggers. For instance, output 10, which is my dome lights, are triggered by trigger number 1. And I have trigger number 1 wired into my factory dome light switch. So when I turn the knob on the steering wheel stalk, it'll trigger output 10 and that'll turn my aftermarket dome lights on. And this last square here is just an inventory of my triggers here. And as I said, I only have 1 right now. Now, as for the actual source of the glitch, I can't say for sure, but I do have a couple theories, a few theories actually. The first being that when I programmed my module initially, I programmed it on the previous version of the app. This is the new version that they released, I think a few months ago now. So I'm wondering maybe there's some sort of conflict between the old and new apps communicating with the module. Maybe it's causing some sort of interference, I don't know. Another theory that I have would be, I deviated from the instructions slightly in a couple areas. The first being the way that I connected my switch pros to the battery. It says here, connect the battery cable directly to the positive terminal of the battery. I didn't do that. I instead ran my switch pros module. My switch pros module is down here on the firewall back here behind the battery. And what I did was run the power to a 500 amp bus bar that I have mounted next to my battery. And then from the bus bar, I ran a cable up to the positive terminal on the battery. So that's one thing that it could be. And then on the front page here, number 8, it's recommended not to use a terminal block. I have a terminal block up here. They recommend not doing this because of, water egress, I guess. Just they're worried that water is going to come in here and, cause some sort of connectivity situation, I guess. I don't know, but I'm not so sure how that would affect the buttons on the app. So other than those things, I'm not really sure what would cause the app to glitch. But if you're like me and you have this issue, which I think is highly unlikely because when I contacted Switch Pros, they told me that I'm actually the first person that contacted them about the glitch that I was having. And I haven't had it since. So I don't know what that says, but yeah, I don't have an answer for you as far as the source of the glitch. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not exactly sure if the app communicates directly with the module or if it connects to the touchpad and then the touchpad communicates with the module. So I wish I would have tried disconnecting my pad before I wiped out my programming, just to see if that would have, sort of dislodged the glitch. But I guess it's too late now. Hindsight is 2020, and the glitch is gone. But if you have this issue in the future, maybe try disconnecting your pad before you go and wipe out your module. Well, here we are, the end of my little nerd fest of a video here. If you stuck around, I appreciate you. If you're interested in getting a Switch Pros, I definitely recommend it. Great little units, made in USA, great customer service. Go and get yourself one. And if you're interested, come and join the Facebook group. It's Switch Pros Think Tank. I just started it about 2 months ago, and I'm hoping to grow it. Be a great place for information and ideas.